Hi, this is Sandy Cormack, and this presentation is called The Leader's Dilemma, the Brain Science of Leadership. We're going to explore how your mental preferences influence not only the kind of leader that you are, but the type of leader that you respond to. And when I sent out the announcement for this, I advised everybody to go back to the report, an ebook that I distributed when you opted in, which outlines the emergenetics model, which is the four thinking styles and three behavioral styles. And we're going to be talking a lot about the thinking styles today. We're not going to be addressing the behavioral styles. So you might need to go and get a better understanding of what these four thinking styles are. I'm just going to assume that you understand them well enough to participate in this video. If you don't, pause the video and please go review them. So I'm going to move right now into the presentation. So what I've got here is an emergenetics profile. And this emergenetics profile is a typical profile. It has on the bottom here, the percentiles regarding how the respondent answered the questions. And up top here, it has a pie chart that represents the percentages of the thinking styles in the brain. So this individual here has, in this pie chart, sort of three pie slices that are bigger. And these represent a preference. Uh, what's determining that is that the fact that the analytical, the social, and the conceptual are all over 23%. So this person has preferences in analytical, social, and conceptual thinking. And I use this information when I'm doing a workshop. I use it to seat people in an arrangement called the most preferred attribute arrangement. This individual's most preferred attribute is analytical because the analytical is 31%, and 31% is the biggest pie slice here. So their most preferred attribute is analytical. And how I would use that in a workshop setting, this is a room, and these are four tables, and it accommodates 32 people. So I'll use that information about most preferred attributes with the group in order to seat them. So this seating places everyone whose most preferred attribute is blue or analytical at this table. The MPA is structural at this table, and then so on with social and conceptual. And I can do all sorts of exercises with them, activities, to increase their understanding of what it means to be in their most preferred attribute. And one of the most effective ones that I use is a word definition activity. What I'll do is I'll take an ambiguous, uh, abstract, universal concept like trust or creativity, and I'll ask them to define that in terms of their most preferred attribute. And it instructs everyone, not just the people at the table, but the people around them, as to what it means, what these concepts mean differently based on what your most preferred attribute is. So, in a recent workshop, I asked them to define leadership. What does it mean to you? And more specifically, what do you look for in a leader? So, going around the table, these are the responses that I got. For the analytical table, people said, we look for somebody who's decisive, but they need to listen to us in a fair and unbiased way. They need to use a very logical approach to their decision making. We want them to be flexible and adaptive and focused and goal oriented. And we also want them to lead by example. Basically, what we expect out of a leader, if we have an analytical preference, is let me sell my idea to you based on rational facts and data and statistics, and listen to me, and then make a fair and unbiased judgment on what I've presented to you. The structural preference table gave this. They said, we want somebody who gives us very clear direction on what they want. That we want and explain the things that they want very well. They need to be organized and on top of things. We also want them to be decisive, but we want them to be more predictable. Um, we want them to know their subject and lead by example. Um, Time management is very important for the structural thinker, so we want them to be punctual. So the structural preference looks for in a leader somebody who is basically the master of their domain, very well organized, very micromanaging almost, being very clear as to exactly what they expect, and to do so in a repeatable manner so that there aren't any surprises. Now, those first two were left brain preferences. Let's move to the right brain. People with a social preference, the people at that table said, we want somebody who works well in a team and somebody who is sensitive to our needs and our opinions and our emotions. Somebody who can motivate us with very good communication skills, somebody who's extremely open-minded and starts off being trusting. We want somebody who's very good at making connections and networking, and somebody who can accommodate us, and especially give credit where credit's deserved. The social thinker wants to be rewarded, and they want to be rewarded in a very public way. They want to be rewarded in a direct, face-to-face way that shows that the person really appreciates what they did. And then finally, the conceptual table said, we want somebody who has a vision and who appreciates our outside the box thinking. We want our leaders to inspire creativity. We don't want to be micromanaged, we want to be macro-managed. We want you to basically lead us by setting the vision and then let us work within that vision. Give us a lot of latitude. Let us be imaginative. Let our interactions be more informal. We want a lot of flexibility, and we want you to be open to lots of new and novel ideas. So from this information, we can now fashion sort of a model of the leadership styles of the four thinking preferences. The analytical leadership style is more technical in nature. It emphasizes analysis. It's focused on solving problems, and it is very fact-based. So the analytical leader says, you've got to sell it to me. You've got to sell it to me with facts, with data, with statistics, and what you propose needs to be the best solution to the problem, and it's up for you to prove it to me. Now, the leadership style of the structural preference is more traditional and emphasizes getting things done, action, execution, implementation. It tends to be very practical and very pragmatic. Since our structural brain is our connection to the past, it likes to use things that have been proven, tried and true. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. So the structural leader is someone who you can count on to do things in a predictable, repetitive fashion. The social leader is somebody who's more humanistic and puts a lot of emphasis on relationships. They emphasize consultation, they're more facilitative, they're inclusive. The social leader is more interested in the overall success of the group than the success of the individuals. So if if an individual succeeds in the group, that's great, but not at the expense of other people in the group. Sort of more of an all for one and one for all approach. And then finally, the conceptual leader is someone who uses an experimental managerial approach. They emphasize getting things started, not necessarily getting things done, initiating. Strategy and vision are the two hallmarks of the conceptual leader. So let's take an example where you've got two individuals. One's a supervisor and one is a subordinate. So the supervisor, let's say, is the structural thinker. The structural thinker says we need to do things in a very predictable, repeatable fashion. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I want. I'm going to be very organized about it, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what I need, and I'm going to expect you to provide that, and I'm going to expect you to provide that on a regular basis. But this conceptual employee says, I don't want that. I don't want you to tell me exactly what you want. I just want you to give me a vision, and I want you to let me be creative. I want you to let me be imaginative. And I don't want you to micromanage me. Okay? So you could see how these two individuals might not get along in a supervisor-subordinate relationship. Turn the tables. If the conceptual person is the supervisor, they're going to want to get things started. So they're the ones who light fires. And they will lay out a broad vision for what they want accomplished. Because this is not a very detail-focused approach to things, the structural employee will feel lost because they want very clear direction and they want things to be explained very well. Because the conceptual leader is more open, the decisiveness might not be good enough for the structural thinker. And because the conceptual is all about new and novel and different, the structural thinker might not do very well with this person because they're more focused on the tried and true. So you could see then how that relationship, if it were flip-flopped, still probably wouldn't be that good. Now, I want you to take that one example and multiply it by the number of people who are in an organization. This is an example of a part of a report, an emergenetics report, showing the thinking preferences of an organization. And I think there's about 40 people in this particular group report. And each one of these shows the average percentile scores for each of the 4 thinking preferences, but it also shows the individual scores of everybody who's in the group. So even though their average is 42 in their analytical thinking, you've got people who are down here around 5 percentile, all the way up to people who are in their 95 percentile. So you can imagine that the leadership styles and the things that they need out of leaders run the entire spectrum in all 4 of these thinking preferences. So that's how I define the leader's dilemma. How do you lead effectively when every brain in the organization expects something different from you? And that's a challenge that we as leaders face on a day-to-day basis. How do we give our people what they need to succeed when I know what I value in a leader, and I know the kind of leader I'd like to be, but I also now know that my leadership style might not be what my people need. So how do we deal with that? Well, first, you need to know your team members' thinking and behavioral preferences. So here is the manager, and this manager has a blue-green preference. That's analytical and structural. Okay, so based on what we have laid out, we understand that managerial style. We know the leadership style of that person. All right? So this person might have a team that has the full range of thinking. People with green and red, people with yellow and red, people with blue, green, and yellow, all sorts of mental diversity. And this is a very good thing to have in an organization. But it also makes it a management challenge, a leadership challenge. The first step is awareness, team awareness and individual awareness. You need to know your own preferences, and then you need to know your team's preferences. And from that understanding, you will get a lot of insight onto what it's going to take to effectively lead and manage this organization. But to take it to the next step, you've got to learn to step outside of your preferences to give the team what it needs. All right? So what that means is, let's take an example of this person's blue-green approach applied to an individual here who is red-yellow. Now think of all the challenges that will place upon both the leader and the employee. What we mean by stepping outside of your preference is to say, in order to lead this person effectively, they're going to expect some things out of me that I'm going to have to learn. I'm going to have to learn to be more sensitive and emotional in my approach, more congenial, more interpersonal in my relationship with this individual. And I'm going to need to be more visionary. I can't just say, I'm going to give you a detailed description of what I want. I'm going to say, I appreciate the fact that you're imaginative and that you're visionary. And so I want to find out what I need to do to let your strengths flourish in my organization because I value them. So the skills that you need to make up for the weaknesses in your profile are what we're talking about. Stepping outside of your preferences basically means building the skills that you need to leverage your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. There are many ways of doing that, and the Emergenetics book outlines ways to simply build the skills so that you can use them when you need them, or to actively make changes in your thinking preference, making the focused effort to change. So the first step in this, as I said, is to know your team members' thinking and behavioral preferences. So as I draw this to a close, I'll say that the first step is to know yourself, to gain insight into yourself. The way you do that is by taking Emergenetics. And I will be offering Emergenetics workshops on a regular basis via webinar, very economical. And from that, you can decide whether or not this approach would benefit you and your organization, and then move into more of a workshop setting for the full team implementation of this. So have a nice day. Thanks for listening, and I will be in touch.